In 1953, Shane captured a legendary Wild West filled with rugged beauty and emotionally charged shootouts, leaving an indelible mark on cinema lovers' hearts. But behind the glamour of the screen were tragic fates you likely never knew, ranging from devastating accidents to shattered lives lived in silence. Let us pay tribute to the stars of Shane and honor the legacy they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. Alan Ladd as Shane. Alan Walbridge Ladd was born on September 3, 1913, in Hot Springs, Arkansas. When he played Shane in 1953, he was 40 years old, fully capable of embodying the lone, cold, but righteous gunslinger in the Western masterpiece, Shane. This role not only defined the archetype of the silent hero in American cinema, but also etched Ladd's name into the memory of millions of viewers. Yet behind that spotlight was a life shrouded in sorrow. Ladd lived with pain from a young age. He lost his father at just 4 years old, drifted through migrant camps with his mother, and grew up poor and self-conscious about his short stature. He clawed his way to stardom, from an unknown radio announcer to a noir icon and cowboy hero. But that fame came at a price. Ladd suffered from chronic insomnia, severe depression, and relied heavily on alcohol and sleeping pills to battle sleepless nights and the crushing weight of fame. In 1962, Hollywood was rocked when Ladd was found collapsed in a pool of blood, a bullet lodged near his heart. Police accepted his claim that it was an accident while responding to a suspected prowler. But insiders whispered it was a desperate cry for help from a man who had lost himself. His love life fared no better. His first marriage ended in divorce. His second wife, also his agent, was the last person by his side as he slowly drowned in liquor and pills. Ladd often avoided eye contact, even on set. One co-star recalled, "He looked at me, but his eyes were elsewhere, like he was trying to escape his own life." On January 29, 1964, Alan Ladd was found dead in bed at his Palm Springs home. Cause of death, cerebral edema from a combination of alcohol, barbiturates, and tranquilizers. Not a fatal dose, but enough to stop his heart. He died at age 50, leaving behind a 5,000-acre ranch in Hidden Valley and an estimated net worth of $25 million. Jack Palance as Jack Wilson. Jack Palance was born on February 18, 1919, in Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania. When he portrayed Jack Wilson, the cold-blooded hired gun with a ghostly presence in Shane, 1953, he was just 34. It was only the fourth film role of his career, but it catapulted him to fame and earned him his second Oscar nomination, turning Palance into one of Hollywood's most iconic villains. Behind his steely exterior was a life of pain and perseverance. From a coal miner's son to a prizefighter known as Jack Brazzo, Palance once boxed for a few $100s just to survive, until a training accident during Wadu bomber drills left his face disfigured. Those scars and his piercing glare would later become his cinematic trademarks. But the spotlight couldn't quiet the storms within. Palance was known for his temper, impulsiveness, and standoffish demeanor. He frequently stormed off sets, clashed with co-stars, and drove production crews into chaos. He went through 2 failed marriages, including a nearly 20-year relationship with first wife Virginia Baker that ended in divorce and bitter property disputes. Alcohol became a steady companion during his lonelier years. Friends often described him as a man battling his own ghosts. He spent his final years quietly on a Pennsylvania ranch and a luxury home in Montecito, California. When not acting, he painted, wrote poetry, and raised cattle. Some of his paintings were sold with handwritten poems, and his art collection was auctioned off just months before his passing. His net worth was estimated at $10 million. On November 10, 2006, Jack Palance died at age 87 at his daughter's home after a long fight with pancreatic cancer. A solemn memorial was held at St. Michael's Ukrainian Catholic Church. a fitting tribute to a man who never forgot his heritage. Van Heftlin as Joe Starret. Van Heftlin was born on December 13, 1908, in Walters, Oklahoma. When he played Joe Starret in Shane, 1953, he was 45. As the steadfast, good-hearted farmer who stood firm to protect his family against dark forces, Heftlin gave the Western genre a sense of moral strength and imbued his character with quiet complexity. Off-screen, however, Heflin's life was riddled with fractures and contradictions. He entered Hollywood as an outsider. At one point, he was suspected of having ties to leftist political groups during the McCarthy-era witch hunts, abruptly halting his rising career. Projects were delayed, leading roles vanished, and the film industry turned cold. The pressure ate away at him silently, making the already reserved man even more withdrawn. His marriage offered little refuge. In 1942, he wed actress Frances Neal, and the couple had 3 children. But with long stretches of filming, rumors of infidelity, and emotional distance creeping in, the relationship deteriorated. They divorced in 1967 after over 20 turbulent years. Family members recalled Heftlin often sitting alone for hours, staring blankly into an empty yard. Loneliness clung to him like a shadow right until the end. Though he lived quietly, he was diligent with his finances, investing wisely in real estate and retaining royalties from successful films like Johnny Eager, 3:10 to Yuma, and Airport. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $3 million, a reward for a lifetime of hard work and quiet endurance. On June 6, 1971, Heftlin suffered a heart attack in his own swimming pool. After nearly 7 weeks in a coma at Cedars-Sinai, he passed away quietly on July 23, 1971, at age 62. Jean Arthur as Marian Starret. Jean Arthur was born on October 17, 1900, in New York. In 1953, at the age of 52, she portrayed Marian Starret in the classic film Shane. As the gentle yet strong wife, Marian symbolized hope, love, and perseverance in the harsh backdrop of the Wild West. This was also the final film role of Jean's career. Behind those serene eyes and graceful smile on screen was a soul in turmoil. Jean Arthur was famously an extreme perfectionist, plagued by severe anxiety and a deep fear of both stage and camera. Throughout her career, she repeatedly walked away from projects, rejected major roles, and even vanished from sets without explanation. These psychological struggles made Jean one of the most elusive stars in Hollywood history. Her marriage to producer Julian Anker lasted exactly 1 day. She later married photographer Frank Ross Jr., but the marriage soon spiraled into tension due to Jean's emotional instability and reclusive nature. She had no children and chose a life of seclusion in her later years, severing most ties with Hollywood and the press. It was the price she was willing to pay to preserve some inner peace. Although she retired fairly early, Jean Arthur lived comfortably thanks to careful investments and royalties from successful films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, The More the Merrier, and Shane. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $4 million, a remarkable sum for an actress who had vanished from the public eye for over 3 decades. Jean Arthur passed away on June 19, 1991, in Carmel, California, at the age of 90. She was a golden-era screen siren who spent her entire life running from the very spotlight that made her shine. Elisha Cook, Jr. as Stonewall Tory. Elisha Vanslick Cook, Jr. was born on December 26, 1903, in San Francisco. In Shane, 1953, he was 49 when he played Stonewall Tory, a brave frontier farmer tragically gunned down. Small, timid, but resolute, Cook gave audiences a haunting image of a vulnerable man standing up to evil. That character also reflected the essence of his own life. His breakout in The Maltese Falcon, 1941, became a curse on his career. After playing Wilmer Cook, The bug-eyed young killer, Elisha was typecast for life in roles as losers, henchmen, and pitiful criminals who were regularly punched, strangled, or shot minutes after appearing. He once bitterly admitted he had died on screen more than any actor in history. Behind those roles was a soul drained by the injustices of Hollywood, a place he worked for 60 years without ever being treated as a true star. Cook's personal life was turbulent as well. He married singer Mary Lou Cook in 1928, but divorced after 13 years. His second marriage to Peggy McKenna also faced strain. They divorced in 1968, remarried in 1971, and remained together until Peggy's death in 1990. With no children and few close ties in the entertainment world, Cook became a ghost in the very industry that had drained him. He withdrew from Hollywood, spending most of his time in a cabin in the High Sierra, fishing, avoiding the noise, occasionally acting, and then disappearing again. Despite all this, he amassed a net worth of about $2 million from over 150 roles. On May 18, 1995, Elisha Cook Jr. died of a stroke in a nursing home at the age of 91. He was the last surviving member of the Maltese Falcon cast, an enduring symbol of film noir's golden age. Brandon DeWilde as Joey Starret. Brandon DeWilde was born on April 9, 1942, in Brooklyn. At age 11, he played Joey Starret in Shane, 1953, a legendary role marked by his wide-eyed wonder and the tear-jerking line, "Shane, come back!" With that performance, Brandon became the youngest actor at the time to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, and from there, his path to stardom seemed destined. But behind the glow of fame, Brandon quickly fell into a spiral of pressure and confusion. As he grew older, his youthful looks made it hard to escape his child star image. His film career stalled, replaced by unremarkable TV roles. Brandon once bitterly confessed he would quit acting until he was old enough to play a middle-aged man. Trapped between adulthood and fame's expectations, he turned to alcohol and drugs to fill the emotional void. His love life was equally chaotic. He married twice. His first marriage ended in arguments, leaving him with a son. The second lasted only a few months. In April 1972, Brandon married Janice Garrow, just 3 months before tragedy struck. In his final years, he dreamed of transitioning to music, recording with his friend Graham Parsons. But the project was never released. Death intervened first. On July 6, 1972, while driving to a concert in Denver, Brandon's camper van lost control, hit a guardrail, and overturned. Trapped in the wreckage with severe injuries, broken neck, back, and legs, he died at the hospital at 7:20 p.m. He was 30 years old. Initially buried in Hollywood, his remains were later moved to Pine Lawn Cemetery in New York to be closer to his family. Brandon left behind roughly $2 million in personal belongings and vehicles, but more importantly, an emotional legacy: Edgar Buchanan as Fred Lewis. William Edgar Buchanan II was born on March 20, 1903, in Missouri. In Shane, 1953, he was 50 when he played Fred Lewis, a simple, trustworthy farmer who dared to stand up against land-grabbing villains. Though a brief role, it radiated justice and mirrored Buchanan's real-life character, kind-hearted, resilient, and always on the side of what's right. Born to a middle-class family with a dentist father, Edgar was pushed to follow in those footsteps, even though his heart belonged to the stage. While studying dentistry in Oregon, he secretly took acting lessons. After graduating in 1928 and marrying Mildred Millie Spence, he set aside his dream. Not until 1939, married with children and a stable dental practice, did he risk it all to start over in Pasadena's amateur theater scene. It was a bold, stressful move. Millie became the household's sole earner as a dentist, while Edgar waited for roles. They had to sell their car, downsize their home, and endure hardship so he could chase his dream. Over 4 decades, he became a familiar TV face as Uncle Joe Carson in Petticoat Junction, Green Acres, and the Beverly Hillbillies. But success brought new heartbreak. He was rarely home. Though Millie remained supportive, they slowly grew distant. Their adopted son, Buck, once said his father was on screen more than in real life. Edgar openly admitted he was tired of being cast in comic or eccentric roles. He yearned for deeper, more serious parts. The clash between passion and duty forced him to live 2 separate lives, one as a beloved TV star, the other as a lonely husband behind the scenes. On April 4, 1979, Edgar Buchanan passed away at age 76 in Palm Desert, California, after a severe stroke complicated by pneumonia. He was buried at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills. At the end of his life, his net worth was estimated at around $10 million, not from leading roles, but from more than 100 enduring performances across 4 decades. Ben Johnson as Chris Callaway. Ben Johnson was born on June 13, 1918, in Foraker, Oklahoma. In 1953, when he was 35 years old, he appeared in Shane as Chris Callaway, a rude henchman who eventually came to respect justice and changed sides. Few people know that this character was a reflection of Ben's real life. From a young age, Johnson grew up surrounded by dust, horses, and ropes on his father's rodeo ranches. A serious accident that nearly took his life during a competition led him to pivot toward Hollywood, starting out merely as a horse handler. But one fateful moment, when he saved 3 people from a runaway wagon on the set of Fort Apache, caught the attention of director John Ford. However, success didn't come easily. After daring to stand up to the notoriously controlling Ford, Johnson was blacklisted from his films for over 10 years, stalling his rising career. During the politically charged McCarthy era, Johnson was also scrutinized by studios for refusing to confess his political beliefs, making it even harder for him to find work in the midst of the Hollywood witch hunts. Ben Johnson's personal life was more stable than many of his peers. He married Carol Elaine Jones in 1941, and they remained together for more than 50 years until her passing in 1994. Though they had no children, their love stayed strong. However, Johnson remained distant from the rest of his family. Some relatives resented him for leaving home too early, and he carried that loneliness with him throughout his life, often confiding only in his horses. Outside of acting, Johnson managed 2 large horse ranches in Arizona and Oklahoma. He often turned down pay raises, even after winning an Oscar in 1971 for his role as Sam the Lion in The Last Picture Show, and frequently said, "I just do what I know best, riding horses and making cowboy movies." Thanks to this humility, he invested wisely in land, real estate, and ranching, accumulating an estimated fortune of $100 million, a staggering amount for an actor who was never one to chase fame. On April 8, 1996, while visiting his elderly mother at a retirement community in Arizona, Ben Johnson suddenly collapsed and died of a heart attack when he was 77 years old. He was buried in the city cemetery of Pawhuska, Oklahoma, the town he once swore he'd return to when all the cheering fades. His mother, Ollie, lived another 4 years, passing away at the age of 101. The two now rest in peace, never far apart. Emil Meyer as Rufus Riker. Emil Meyer was born in 1910 in New Orleans. With his sharp features, intimidating stare, and gravelly, commanding voice, he was quickly typecast in roles of powerful villains. But behind his portrayal of cattle, Baron Rufus Riker in Shane, 1953, when he was 43 years old, a man willing to hire a killer to defend his land, was someone deeply conflicted by a personal life full of fractures. Success came late. It wasn't until he was 40 years old that Emil truly stepped into Hollywood, thanks to the discerning eye of Elia Kazan. But as quickly as his career climbed, his private life fell apart. His volatile temper and tendency to lash out led to clashes with directors and co-stars, especially on the set of Paths of Glory, where Stanley Kubrick made him redo scenes dozens of times. Kubrick's perfectionism and Meyer's hot-headedness damaged their relationship so badly that they never worked together again. Off-screen, Meyer was involved in numerous extramarital affairs, which ultimately tore apart his family. His wife, a high school teacher, left after nearly 2 decades of enduring his behavior, taking their only daughter with her. Meyer lived alone in an aging home in Louisiana, collecting antique guns as a way of regaining the control that life had stripped from him. In his later years, Alzheimer's disease rapidly destroyed his memory. Once a man who could memorize scripts like lightning, he eventually forgot the titles of his own films and even the names of the few family members who still visited. Tragically, Emil Meyer died on March 19, 1987, from complications of Alzheimer's disease when he was 76 years old. His remaining estate consisted mainly of an old house in Slidell and a vintage weapons collection valued at around $5 million, modest compared to the earnings of his fellow actors. John Durkas as Morgan Riker. John Durkas was born on February 10, 1905. When he appeared in Shane, 1953, he was 48 years old, playing Morgan Riker, the ruthless brother of cattle boss Rufus Riker. With a height of 6 feet 6 inches and a rugged face, he was the perfect fit for cold, distant villains, roles that chilled audiences and also typecast Durkas for most of his career. Durkas's life was far from a smooth Hollywood story. Though he entered the industry through John Huston's advice and soon worked with legends like Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick, and George Stevens, he never reached star status. Durkas carried a quiet, introverted demeanor, but after the lights dimmed, he grew increasingly withdrawn. The dark roles he played began affecting his mental state, turning him into a more difficult and emotionally distant person at home. His marriage to Cynthia Durkas, initially his emotional anchor, soon deteriorated due to his obsessive devotion to acting and emotional detachment. He often missed key family moments, and his wife later accused him of being controlling and cold. His relationship with his children weakened over time, and he spent his final years in silence, avoiding the media, a lone figure haunted by the roles he once brought to life. Unlike many artists of his era who turned to alcohol or drugs, Durkas had a quieter, deadlier vice: cigarette addiction. Years of relentless smoking led to severe emphysema, which drained both his strength and the unique voice that once defined him on screen. He died on January 8, 1975, in Los Angeles, just weeks before what would have been his 70th birthday. He passed in solitude and melancholy. His estate included a worn-down house in Santa Monica and a collection of rare personal effects, totaling about $2 million. A humble sum compared to the emotional weight he once brought to Hollywood. Douglas Spencer as Axel Swede Shipstead. Douglas Spencer, born William Henry Messenkop, was born on February 10, 1910, in Princeton, Illinois. Standing 6 feet 2 inches tall with a deep voice and kind expression, he was the perfect fit for Axel Swede Shipstead, the friendly farmer in Shane, 1953, when he was 43 years old. Though never a headlining star, Spencer left a lasting mark in film through warm and memorable supporting roles. Behind his calm exterior, however, was a life filled with quiet ripples. Before becoming known for roles in The Thing from Another World and This Island Earth, Spencer had spent years working as a stand-in for actor Ray Milland. That connection brought him a few small roles, but also chained him to someone else's shadow, a burden Spencer silently carried until his death. His personal life was far from smooth. At one point, he was embroiled in a blackmail scandal when a former lover threatened to expose their secret relationship to the press. Though the situation quickly faded from headlines, it left a stain that stalled his career, even costing him roles in several high-profile projects. Spencer secretly battled diabetes, a condition he kept hidden for many years. By the late 1950s, the illness began ravaging his body. Repeated hospital stays and mounting medical expenses gradually drained his already limited finances. He once told a friend, "I play strong men on screen, but I've never felt weaker in real life." He died on October 6, 1960, in Los Angeles, when he was 50 years old, from complications due to diabetes. He left behind roughly $1 million, mostly from the residuals of his final TV roles and a few remaining assets. Ray Spiker as Axel Johnson. Ray Spiker, born Ray Faust, was born on January 6, 1902 in Wisconsin. With a muscular build and rugged features, he was a perfect fit for the role of Axel Johnson, the tough, resilient farmer in Shane, 1953, when he was 51 years old. Though his screen time was brief, every moment he appeared conveyed the commanding presence of a man who had truly lived and fought outside the world of film. However, Spiker's real life was far less peaceful than the steady demeanor of the characters he portrayed. A former boxer, he quickly fell victim to the vices often awakened in the entertainment world. Alcohol, his longtime companion, turned nights of celebration into violent brawls. He was once escorted out of a Hollywood bar by police after a fight that left 3 people hospitalized. Rumors spread quickly, and soon several major studios blacklisted him. 2 failed marriages left him with emotional voids that were never filled. Spiker seemed unable to maintain close relationships with his children, whom he rarely mentioned in the few interviews he gave. One former colleague once said, "Ray could throw a punch, act decently, but never figured out how to hold someone, even his own family." In his final years, Spiker lived quietly in a small house in California, far from the stage lights and noise that once made him stand out. When he died on February 23, 1964, under circumstances that were never clearly reported in the press, he left behind an estimated $500,000, mostly from his old house and a few modest savings. Steve Raines as Riker's man. Steve Raines was born on June 17, 1916, in Grants Pass, Oregon. In 1953, when he was 36 years old, he appeared in the classic film Shane as Riker's man, a tough, defiant henchman working for the ruthless cattle baron Rufus Riker. Raines stood out with his tall frame, piercing gaze, and a cowboy presence rooted in real-life experience as a World War II soldier and rodeo riding champion. His life was a journey from orphanage to Hollywood film sets. From the 1950s through the 1970s, he appeared in numerous Western TV series such as Rawhide, Maverick, and The High Chaparral. Yet behind the scenes was a man torn by addiction, anger, and poor decisions. Raines was once fired for getting into a drunken fight on set. One director remarked, "Steve rode like the wind, but couldn't rein in his own temper." His personal life was equally chaotic. Raines went through multiple brief marriages, often ending in tears, divorce papers, and accusations of domestic abuse. He was once legally barred from contacting his youngest daughter after a heated altercation on a ranch. Despite owning valuable properties in Oregon, he repeatedly fell into debt due to failed investments and had to sell land to pay off legal fees. He spent his final years in seclusion, staying close to the land where he grew up. On January 4, 1996, Steve Raines passed away from a stroke when he was 79 years old. His net worth was estimated at around $3 million, mostly in ranch value, though much of it had been mortgaged to cover debts. Edith Evansson as Mrs. Shipstead. Edith Evansson was born on April 29, 1896, in Tacoma, Washington. When she was 57 years old, she played Mrs. Shipstead, the Swedish farmer's wife in Shane, 1953, bringing to life a strong, patient woman surviving in the unforgiving Wild West. Though a supporting role, it added richness to the film and captured Edith's trademark authenticity. Before entering acting, Edith worked as a courtroom reporter, a job that gave her sharp observational skills, which proved invaluable on screen. She married Morris Otto Evansson in 1923, but the childless marriage gradually grew distant. During the 1940s and 1950s, she appeared in dozens of supporting roles, from maids to stern landladies, opposite legends like Spencer Tracy, Joan Crawford, and Orson Welles. But Edith was known for being difficult on set. She once clashed with a director over her refusal to have her lines cut. Off-screen, she lived a private, introverted life. Her marriage to Morris lasted but lacked warmth, and cracks began to show, especially as her career became more unstable in later years. After her final appearance in Apple's Way in 1974, she vanished from the entertainment industry and retreated to a secluded life in Riverside County. Though she had once been invited by director George Cukor to coach Marilyn Monroe and mingled with Hollywood's elite, Edith chose isolation. No children, no complicated will. On November 29, 1980, she died of heart failure at the age of 84. As per her wishes, her ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean. Her estate, though modest, around $3 million, was donated entirely to charitable causes, a final reminder that the brightest lights don't always come from center stage, but often from those who quietly stand behind it. The stars of Shane left an unforgettable mark on the hearts of fans, even as their own lives were filled with unforgettable tragedies. Which actor in this legendary cast touched you the most? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and share to help keep the memory of this cinematic masterpiece alive.